Stephen Dubner. On the next Freakonomics Radio, a lot of people will tell you that taking out a payday loan is a terrible idea. This guy, for instance.
At first, it seems like easy money, but the average borrower ends up spending about 200 days out of the year in debt.
But are payday loans really as evil as people say? It's next time on Freakonomics Radio. Saturday afternoon at 4 on 93.9 FM WNYC.
WNYC receives support from the New York Community Trust, helping generous New Yorkers fund the causes they love in their communities. What do you love? More at nycommunitytrust.org.
You're listening to The Takeaway on 93.9 FM and WNYC.org. Stay tuned for the latest news on all things considered and WNYC.
This is The Takeaway. I'm John Hockenberry, and the golden number for the Golden State Warriors is 73.
It's official, number 73. The greatest regular season in NBA history now belongs to the 2016 Golden State Warriors.
That's the new record for NBA games won in a single season, a record held by the 1995-96 Chicago Bulls. Mike Breen with the call there on ESPN. In the final game of the season last night against the Memphis Grizzlies, the Warriors socked away some legend on their way to the playoffs, and Steph Curry got to practice his three-point shots, including this milestone.
Old-fashioned Williams, Curry does it. 400 three-pointers in a season.
He finished the game with 402 three-pointers for the season, breaking his own record by 116. Sekou Smith is a sports reporter and senior analyst for NBA Digital at Turner Broadcasting. Sekou, this is like the crazy time. I mean, Warriors, does anyone touch them?
They were so good this season. You win 73 games, first team in the history of the league to do that, and we're talking 70-plus years of history. It's really hard to look around the league and figure out who could, step up and knock them off on their way to a second straight championship.
And this three-point shooting business, I mean, he's channeling something from another galaxy.
I think what it really boils down to is here's a guy who was never really, among those elite players as a young guy, as a teenager, the son of an NBA player, of course, so he grew up around the game, but was never one of those guys who had it handed to him. And you're seeing all of the hard work that he's put in come to fruition, and really his teammates are really locked in and on that same level in terms of work ethic.
So wait a minute, you're telling me that Curry is getting playground revenge with all those threes on an NBA pro court?
I think that has a lot to do with it. He doesn't wear his chip on his shoulder, but there's a competitor inside of Stephen Curry that really has that in his mind in terms of being a guy who was always on the outside looking in as a younger player. Even 5 years ago, when he first stepped into the league, there were people skeptical of whether or not he could even be a real legitimate starting point guard. And here he is on his way to being a two-time MVP.
Well, the night also ended with the last game of Kobe Bryant for the LA Lakers, and he had a decent night.
Not bad. I mean, for him to put on the kind of show he did, it's really unbelievable. But it speaks to the talent and the drive of a guy who spent 20 years etching his name all over the record books in the NBA, a guy who goes down as one of the 10 all-time great players at any position in the league.
The fact that on that last night that he made 60 points, is that a bigger number, or is the shooting percentage a bigger number?
In the history of the game, nobody his age walking away did it in the fashion that he did. I mean, we're talking 60 points, as the oldest player in league history to score that many points in a game. Nobody will forget the championships and all of the fantastic things he did throughout his career, but there are going to be some asterisks next to Kobe's name. People talk about the shooting percentages and some of the things he dealt with off the court, but you can't deny him, in terms of him being an absolutely all-time great player.
Well, he looked like he was having fun, that's for sure, and he hasn't looked like he's been having fun for years. And even though he shot 22 for 50, it's a party at the end of the season.
I think a lot of that had to do with not only the fans who were in attendance and turned it into an all-day circus outside the Staples Center, but he had so many of his former teammates there, so many different guys that he played with. And even to see him embrace Shaquille O'Neal a couple times, during and after the game was really something special when you consider the history those two guys had as teammates.
Well, Kobe Bryant embraces history, and the Warriors seem keen to make more history on their way to a championship. Sekou Smith, thanks so much.
Thank you very much, John.
Sekou Smith is sports reporter and senior analyst for NBA Digital at Turner Broadcasting. Freedom of speech has been stretched and twisted by the proliferation of digital online media that use text and graphics together. It's more urgent than ever that environments make themselves more accessible to the blind and visually impaired. Facebook and all of its platforms, including Instagram and WhatsApp, have rolled out a feature that reads short descriptions of photos to blind people.
What they're looking for are people, objects, and scenes. So you might hear something like, photo may contain two people smiling. You might hear something like food, pizza, cookies, that sort of thing. And you might hear about indoors, outdoors, sky.
That's Scott Blanks, who uses the feature in his home office in San Francisco. From Facebook's point of view, it's a step to expand the number of users. Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg at a major conference on Tuesday.
We stand for connecting every person, for a global community, for bringing people together, for giving all people a voice, for a free flow of ideas and culture across nations.
For now, the automatic alternative text feature is only on iPhones and in English, and the descriptions are limited. But Scott Blanks, who's a senior director of programs at San Francisco Lighthouse for the Blind and Visually Impaired, has used the app for a week and says even a single word can make a difference.
One photo that really moved me, I encountered a couple of days ago. My wife shared a photo from several years back, and of course, in the past, I would have simply heard photo. And what I heard on Saturday was photo may contain ultrasound. And it was, in fact, of course, the ultrasound for our twin boys. And though it just contained that one word, it opened up a lot of memories. And, my wife and I had a conversation. And of course, it wasn't something that I didn't know, but it allowed me to connect with her and reconnect with her, I suppose, in a way that maybe wasn't possible before.
Would you say there's a potential for this technology being used to hack the experience of other Facebook users?
100%. I've heard people talking about this technology, this automated alternative text technology being utilized to convey advertising, for example. I think that that's possible. Of course, we don't want this technology to be sullied, but I would say that this object recognition technology that Facebook is using is in its first stage. And it's a beautiful thing. There are many companies working on different aspects of this to identify everything from the photos in your news feed to what objects, people, places are around you as you travel through your world.
Do you detect that the limits in the vocabulary of the Facebook algorithm reflect some sort of moral character, some we don't want to go there kind of thing?
I wouldn't say I detect that, but I think they want to ensure this technology is accurate, that it is not misidentifying anything. There's a balance between ensuring people have better access, and also we don't want to add an element of confusion. This technology is not perfect, and though the technology's vocabulary is limited, it's clear that they have started with some things that they're sure can be clearly identified, that are not going to introduce a level of ambiguity into the equation. At some point, I suppose that we might get a photo caption on Facebook that said something like 3 people who appear to be very intoxicated, and perhaps worse.
Okay, what are the jokes?
I think the most common thing that I've heard from some people is, wow, this is wonderful. How do I turn it off? And I certainly haven't dug around to find that because it hasn't rubbed me the wrong way or bothered me yet. I'm sure that there will be more jokes as the algorithm expands to include more and more descriptions and more words. As far as I know, I haven't encountered any egregious mistakes by the technology, but of course, I guess I wouldn't know. What's also really fascinating to me about this is that I've noticed a few more people adding captions to their photos themselves. And anytime these technologies reach the mainstream and reach many people, it's always a good thing. It makes people think, ask questions, engage, and hopefully learn more about their fellow human beings.
Scott Blanks is Senior Director of Programs at San Francisco Lighthouse for the Blind and Visually Impaired. Thanks so much, Scott.
Thank you, John.
WNYC salutes the arts. Join us in supporting local organizations, including House of Speakeasy, bringing writers and audiences together at Seriously Entertaining, a literary cabaret at Joe's Pub at the Public Theater, and Empire City Men's Chorus, dedicated to performing an adventurous repertoire and continuing collaboration with living composers on new works. For more information about the Support the Arts program, visit wnyc.org/star.
You're listening to The Takeaway from WNYC and PRI Public Radio International, in collaboration with the New York Times and WGBH Boston Public Radio.
He's been a fixture in the U.S. Senate during the Obama era, the man with the voice a whine or so short of Cicero. 2016 marks Minority Leader Harry Reid's final year inside the Senate chamber. After 3 decades, enough is enough.
Listen, I know I get the mail, I see my mail, and so I know I don't make everybody happy, but I've never tried to do that. I've always tried to do what I thought was the best thing to do, and I've been under the theory that the best thing for me to do for the people of Nevada and the country is just tell people how I feel.
Takeaway Washington correspondent Todd Zwillich caught up with Senator Reid this week to discuss his career, the election, and why he just doesn't understand the current strategy of Senate Republicans when it comes to Merrick Garland, Supreme Court Justice nominee.
I've been struck by the smiles we see around here with Republicans. They're kind of self-assured. Oh, man, we're sticking together. Isn't that wonderful? It's kind of like the fish that sees the big worm in the water. He gulps that down, so happy. But realizes shortly thereafter there's a big hook in that worm. And that doesn't work out so well. And I think that's basically what the Republicans are going to find. They can be smiling today, but this has already hurt them. It's made less competitive races more competitive, and I think they're going to lose the Senate for sure, and I think that's going to hurt their quest for the White House. I think this is going to reverberate, as it has, through the entire society. What are they trying to hide? Why don't they do hearings? And now I know the answer. The answer is they're afraid to. Garland is a perfect candidate for the Supreme Court. Anyone could have nominated him. And I mean anyone.
What do you think has been your role in the public's perception that government has become dysfunctional? They're incredibly frustrated. They want to kill all the incumbents. Everybody has some measure of responsibility for that. What do you think yours has been, if any?
Every Congress since we became a country, there have been times when the Senate, which is a body that moves very slowly, has had problems. But the problems have all been minor compared to what happened after Obama was elected. Minor. The Republicans met after he was elected, and they met for 2 days here in Washington, all the Republican big shots, to plan a strategy, how to take this guy out, this president that they felt was illegitimate president. They decided 2 things. Number one, he will not be reelected. They failed that miserably. He was elected by more than 5 million votes. But their number two, they have succeeded admirably, and that is they would oppose everything and anything that Obama wanted. And they've done that. I've been here 34 years. There's never been anything like the past 7.5 years.
There's an argument, of course, that you've helped make that the Republicans nominating Donald Trump or even Ted Cruz really favors Democrats in their bid to take over the Senate. One alternate interpretation is that if all the Republican money doesn't want to support Trump, they'll pour it into Senate races, and they'll pour it into congressional races, and that could actually help some of the vulnerable Republicans in this race. Do you think there's any merit to that, or do you think it's all win for Democrats in November here?
If you're Charles and David Koch and have $75 to $80 billion, they're not going to.
How do you deal with depression in a period like that?
You know, I was married and I am married, and I had a little girl, and I can't slip off the planet. Like I can't just give into it. So I have to sort of like slowly put one foot in front of the other. But like there was just a real sense of like, if I had been not married with a kid, I would have booked that Dave Chappelle ticket to South Africa. Like, I would have just been like, good luck, everybody. Like, that makes a lot of sense now, Dave Chappelle. I get it now. I would have disappeared for a while. I think I would have, not, I don't mean any sort of dangerous way, I think, but I would have like totally just been like, well, I think I'm done with this, with whatever this is. But I couldn't do it. I mean, and I slowly realized that the canceling of the show was probably better for my career anyway, because the show was sort of going by drips and drabs by that point. It wasn't really, we weren't getting good ratings, we weren't getting a lot of attention. I was sort of, the wear and tear was seen on my face. My friends who watched the show could see that it was hard for me. And when the show got canceled, all this sort of love, it became like Woodstock. More people claimed they were there than who were clearly there. and so it suddenly became like all these articles were written up about it and all this love. And now there's a narrative about it that I've been able to embrace. And like, yes, that's right, another African-American folktale. The man can't handle my truth bombs. So like it became this thing where I was like, I could sort of sit on top of the legend of the show and not actually be sort of crushed by the weight of the show.
So then you moved from your too expensive, now that you didn't have a TV show, your too expensive apartment in New York, back to the West Coast?
Yeah, what happened is my wife got pregnant.
To the Bay Area?
Yeah, to the Bay Area. My wife got pregnant and we started to go to OBGYNs in New York, and we had our first daughter in San Francisco, at the very sort of like, just take your time and enjoy yourself and breathe and have some tea and have the baby. And then OBGYN in New York, they're like, we will take that baby out of you. Like, you get 20 minutes to deliver that baby. If not, we're coming in. And my wife was just like, I don't want to do this. And I was like, I don't want you to do this. And so really, my wife being pregnant was the determining factor. Like, we need to be around our friends and family as we go through this again. And then once we got through, I mean, my wife, we did everything but kiss the ground when we got out. When we had been back several times, but we knew we had moved back, it was like, this is where we belong.
And how did you get your bearings again as a comic?
It's funny. It was like I'd done some shows, but then when we moved back, my wife was very pregnant. So I got the pilot for the CNN show, and so I knew that I had that thing working. And then I actually just did this thing where there was a venue very near my house where we live in Berkeley, and so I did a series of shows called Home by 10, where it was a series of stand-up comedy shows that I did, where it was just like the idea, there was once a week on Thursdays, and the whole idea was that the show is close enough to my house I can be home by 10. And it was just a way to sort of really try out lots of new material, and also a lot of people in Berkeley just wanted to come see me, and the Bay Area just were like, you're back, and there's a lot of love for me being back. And so through that, I sort of built myself back up into feeling like, oh, I'm a person again. Because I really wanted to feel like a person again. I didn't want to feel like a guy with a TV show.
Based on our previous interview, you moved a lot with your mother and went to a lot of different schools. You spent some of the time in Alabama with your father. So I think most children become slightly different people depending on the context that they're in, because you're still being shaped by the world around you. You don't know who you are yet. So if the world is always telling you who you are and the world keeps changing, that must have a really big impact on you.
Yeah, I mean, it basically made me an introvert. It made me, I think everybody manifests that differently. Some people become a super, like, I'm friends with everybody, but for me, it just made me sort of go inside. And I'm also an only child. I have a stepsister, but I was really raised as an only child. And so I'm always in my head anyway, and that's what led me to stand-up comedy, because I was always in my head thinking things over, and always thinking of the thing to say, but not having the courage to say it. And so it made me a real sort of an extreme introvert, and not sort of feeling disconnected from everybody, because I felt like I was not going to be there that long. And it was only after graduating from high school and then going to college for a little bit, actually here in Philadelphia, briefly, that I sort of got to figure out, well, who am I? And that's, I'm a stand-up, I'm somebody who always wanted to do stand-up comedy, so I do that.
So you left college?
Yeah, I dropped out of college. The narrative would be great to be, I dropped out of college to become a comedian. No, I dropped out of college because it was hard and I couldn't figure out how to get through the day. That was another time in my life I got pretty depressed. I'm like, I've made a bad choice in my college choices. This is not where I want to be. It's a great school, but it wasn't for me. And then I went home and laid in bed all day and watched LA burn to the ground, and during the Rodney King riots, and sort of slowly my mom signed me up for classes at Second City because she knew it was something that I always talked about, and that, 25 years later, here we are. But yeah, it was just sort of like a very slow process.
My guest is comic W. Kamau Bell. His new CNN series, United Shades of America, premieres Sunday, April 24th. His Showtime comedy special premieres April 29th. This is Fresh Air.
You're listening to Fresh Air on WHYY. It's 3:49. Democrat Bernie Sanders has downplayed foreign policy in his presidential campaign, and that's creating a bit of mystery for many.
We just don't have much in the way of specifics or a long track record on foreign policy to really assess any other dimension of what he would do.
A look at how Sanders has voted in Congress and what he's said over the years for clues on how a President Sanders might approach world issues. That story, the day's news on All Things Considered, ahead at 4 this afternoon, following Fresh Air on WHYY.
Support for WHYY comes from the Rutgers-Camden Professional Degree Programs. The Rutgers-Camden Professional MBA and Professional Master of Accounting degrees are cohort-based accelerated degree programs designed for working professionals with classes held on Saturdays in Princeton, New Jersey. The next cohort begins this fall. Rutgers' next information session is on Saturday, April 16th at 10 a.m. at the Crown Plaza, Princeton. pmba.rutgers.edu or 856-225-2700. The Rutgers-Camden Professional Degree Programs. Expect more. Be more.
The Philadelphia Orchestra supports WHYY, music commissioned by and created for the fabulous Philadelphia sound. Yannick Nézet-Séguin and the Philadelphia Orchestra perform Leonard Bernstein's Fancy Free and Prokofiev's Final Symphony No. 7, plus world premieres commissions for members of the orchestra. Tickets online or at 215-893-1999 now. This Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at the Kimmel Center. Bernstein, Prokofiev, and more. Composed for the Philadelphia Orchestra.
This evening's forecast, clear skies, low 40 degrees. Sunny tomorrow, Friday's high 64. To the weekend, sunny days, Saturday's high 66, up to 72 on Sunday. Head to Monday, sunny skies, high approaching 80.
This is Fresh Air. My guest is comic W. Kamau Bell. He has a new CNN series called United Shades of America and a new Showtime stand-up comedy special called Semi-Prominent Negro. There's a part in the Showtime special where you talk about trying to find like a preschool for one of your daughters, and there's this like preschool that's like really wonderful. It's all about like playtime for the children, because children shouldn't be oppressed by having to learn too much, to have time to be themselves and be children and be free. And you go, no, they're talking about black children here.
Yes.
And they really need to learn.
Yes.
Because this is what they're going to be up against.
Especially raising two black female children. Like, no, they already are seen as being behind the starting line. They're already sort of started behind the starting line. So I need this child to be as ready as possible, as soon as possible. And I need knowledge. I really feel like my daughter's just a sponge. I need to just put as much into her, more than she can hold, as opposed to giving her space to sort of just be.
So that reminded me of what you told me about your mother, that when you were young, she always tried to send you, no matter what city you were living in, to a private school so that you could get the best education, which was very important to her. She taught African American studies, she worked in publishing. But the flip side of that was that those private schools were predominantly white, so you were left being one of the very few African Americans in the school, which probably added to any identity issues you were going through. Do you think a lot about that in terms of your children and what they'll go through? Though in the Bay Area, I'm sure things are pretty multicultural.
They can be, but that's also changing, thanks to the good people in Silicon Valley. So they're working hard every day to change that. They're really doing well in that project, the whiteification of the Bay Area. So yes, it means that our oldest daughter Sammy goes to kindergarten in the fall, and my wife, like, in a very academic way, like, really took on the job of like finding the right school and then going to not dozens, but maybe a dozen schools to look at things, public schools, private schools, charter schools, and really had friends. They would meet together and sort of talk about other friends who were trying to get their kids in. And so it was a very active decision. It was not going to be like, oh, we'll just go to the school across the street. And we found a school, and there's two things: the educational side, but then also because of what I've been through, the multicultural race side, like to make sure that there's enough that my daughter feels like she looks around and sees lots of different shades of the rainbow of skin color, and that she doesn't feel like she's the only one. And also that there's to be right clear, there's also a lot, not just those, but black people, like contingent of black people there, because it's like, it's important to me that my daughter learns what I learned, that like no matter how you feel you were being treated by black people at any given time, those are your people. Like nobody, like, so.
How does your wife feel when you say that?
How does my wife feel? Those are her. She knows that those are my daughters. She knows that, like, we've talked about that a lot. It was really like, you know, and the joke I do about the hair was really just a piece of the puzzle. Like, we had a lot of conversations. She understood that she was having a black daughter, which is, and part of the way she understood that is to, I need to learn how to do her hair. So my wife knows she has black kids, but she also knows she has female children. So that's, you know, so there's it's not just about being black. There's a lot that we have to offer. And my daughter has my parents are great, but my wife's parents are like the ultimate grandparents. Like, you know, the sort of the like tea party, donuts every day. Like, you know, like you can watch as much TV as you want. Like, so and those are her grandparents too, and those are white people. You know, so you know, we're very proactive about this. And also, it wasn't really my wife who had to come to this conclusion. It was like her parents who had to realize this. And I'm going to say this, and I know I think I've said this. I don't know. I'm sort of saying I don't know how my wife will feel about this information getting out. It's not a big deal, but I think she'll be fine. My wife told me that at one point her mom came to her, I think while my wife was still pregnant, and said, "So wait, Sammy's going to be black." And my wife was like, "Yes, that's true." And she said her mom was like, "Okay." And in that little tiny thing was like years of like race discussions with my wife and me and her, and her getting her family sort of into the idea of like, my boyfriend is this black guy, my husband is this black guy. Like, sort of like there was just a whole like, you know, circle of life that happened in that one moment that I was like sort of wasn't there for, but I was like, yay. You know.
So now that you're the father of two daughters who are old enough to miss you when you're gone,
thanks for bringing that up.
Is it frustrating when you do your job as a stand-up comic and you're on the road, you're also away from your family?
It's the best. I mean, I didn't know how hard that would be, especially my oldest daughter who's 5. She gets that I travel, but it's still hard on her. Every now when I leave, every time she gets really sort of like clingy and starts to whine. My youngest daughter doesn't. She's 17 months. She doesn't really get what's happening, but my wife will often say, she will, like, when they come home, she'll just run into the house and go, "Dada, Dada, Dada," looking for me. And it's just, you know, it's I feel really privileged to be able to have a career, thanks to a lot of good breaks and hard work, that I can put food on my family's table, and that this thing that was like basically a glorified hobby for the first 10 or 15 years is now a real thing that actually can send them to good schools and give them a good life. It just also sucks that it means I have to leave home. I'm really excited for the time when my oldest daughter, she's almost there, is old enough to come with me sometimes.
Oh.
I'm really excited. Like I said, we're friends. And so I'm really excited I haven't done it yet, but I'm very close to just sort of, like, if I take a short trip, just bringing her with me. Because I think she's very fascinated by my career. She actually said recently, "I want to be on television like Dad." And I was like, "No, you want to be an accountant." For the people on TV, maybe. But, you know, I'm excited for the idea of bringing them with me. A lot of my friends who are comics don't have families. Like, they're, you know, even though some of them are the same age as me. And so I feel really sort of alone a lot of times in that sense of, like, being out and missing my family. But it's important to me that this career isn't separate from my family, which is why we moved back to the Bay Area. And it's important to me that my kids get deep. The whole idea of show business, the mystery comes out of it. It's just what Dad does.
Kamau, it's been so great to talk with you again. Thank you so much, and good luck with your new shows.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here. I know I won't be here as often as Louis C.K., but I'm glad to be back.
It's totally great to have you back. W. Kamau Bell's CNN series United Shades of America premieres Sunday, April 24th at 10 p.m. Eastern. His Showtime stand-up comedy special, Semi-Prominent Negro, premieres April 29th. I'm Terry Gross.
Support for NPR